Greetings, everyone. I hope you're having a fabulous day. This will be the first video in my series on the Blood Covenant. The whole heart of the covenant has to do with the love of God. And the love of God in the Bible, in the New Testament, they use a Greek word, AGAPE. And this word was not a commonly used word during that time. And it was used to describe God kind of love. And if you're like me, I was raised up with the idea that God loved me when I did everything right. And he was frowning at me when I was doing stuff wrong. And the problem I was having was I felt like I was doing stuff wrong all the time. I could never be that perfect person I was told I needed to be in order to be a good Christian. I felt like I fell short all the time. But when my eyes were open to what God's love is all about, it changed my perspective on everything. And I saw myself and I saw my worth in the eyes of my Father. And what happens a lot of times, the enemy will try to steal that from you. And I remind myself of his love. And I think the closest idea of what that love is like is when we hold our little newborn babies in our arms and we bring them home from the hospital and we take care of them through the night. They wake us up. Man, my first baby, he woke me up every hour and a half. And I got up and fed him and changed his diaper and rocked him, put him back to sleep. And I'd go through the house like a zombie the next day because I didn't get any sleep. But not once did I consider not loving that little guy. Never once did I consider that he was a nuisance or a bother. He was my child. He was my son. And I felt that way with all four of my children. They were so precious to me, and I delighted in being their mother. And our Father's love is even greater than that love I had for my children. And that's really hard for me to wrap my head around that. But a mother's heart or a father's heart is the closest example that we have of God's love. And that's why I said in my other video, we have to have it revealed to us. We have to be awakened to it. Yet so much that we hear in the religious world is anything but that love. And it's really quite sad. And I want to talk now that the love of God, because in John 4:7-8, remember that verse from last video, was that God is love. If we don't love, it's because we don't know him. And if we don't know him, it's because we're not understanding his love. And so the heart of the covenant is God's love for us. And that was his motivation, the motivation of Jesus, God who became flesh and dwelt among us, the motivation for him. Think about it. He's the creator. He created us, yet he chose to join his creation and be one of his creation in order to reveal the heart of our Father to us. And Luke 15 is a perfect example of Jesus showing that love. He's eating with sinners. He's eating with those people the church people would have nothing to do with. The Pharisees, they were gathered around watching Jesus eat with these people they considered not worthy of any attention at all. Tax collectors and prostitutes and the kind of people that good Christian folks don't hang out with. And Jesus knew what they were thinking. He knew what they were talking. So he told some parables. And the first one was of how the shepherd will leave 99 behind to go out and look for that one lost sheep. And when he finds him, he puts him around his neck. And he celebrates. And he brings that sheep home. And he puts him in the sheepfold with the rest of the sheep. Because that sheep is valuable to him. That sheep matters. That sheep belongs to him. It's his sheep, and he's going to get it. And then he told the story about the little old lady who lost one of her 10 coins. And she takes the house apart. She puts all the furniture out on the lawn, and she gets her broom, and she sweeps every nook and cranny until she finds that lost coin. And then when she has it, she has to throw a party to celebrate. And there's a lot of significance to the 10 coins. It had something to do with her covenant relationship with her husband. So it really mattered to her. And the last story is my favorite, the story of the prodigal son, who he goes to his father who's still alive. And the father, in that culture, he would have the family business, a farm. And in his old age, his sons would operate that farm and provide for him in his old age. And this younger son, he had two sons. The younger son came to the father and demanded his inheritance early. And the father did it. He had to sell 1/3 of the farm, because in those days the older son got a double portion and the younger son only got 1/3. So that son took that money that his father had worked so hard, and he squandered it. He squandered it. And once his money ran out and his friends ran out, he was forced to get a job feeding pigs, which was a pariah for a Jewish boy to have anything to do with pigs. And he was so hungry, he would eat some of the food that the pigs were feeding on, and then he remembered something. The servants in his father's house never went hungry. So he kind of made up this speech in his head that, I'll go to my father and tell him I'm not worthy, and I'll offer myself as a hired servant, because then that way he wouldn't have to live on the farm. He could come and work for his father, and he knew he'd always get food. So he trots off to return home. And the father, who is on the porch looking, and he sees his son's silhouette against the sky, and the father doesn't wait for the son to come all the way to the front door. He runs to that son. Now that son has done nothing to deserve this father's love. Nothing. And that father runs to him, and it was a great shame for a man of that age to run with his gown or his robe pulled up, his clothes pulled up, and to let his legs stick out. So he didn't even care what the neighbors thought. He ran to that son, and that son starts to, say his little speech he rehearsed, and the father doesn't even let him finish it. And he's hugging him and kissing him and loving on him. And this son realizes his father's love in a way he didn't know before. And the father tells his servant to go get my robe and my ring. And this has great significance to the family and to covenant. And you realize the father is giving this son his full sonship back. He's declaring it right here. And he's bringing the robe to him because, if you think about it, the father didn't want everybody seeing that son and those rags and that filth. And so he's going to cover him up here and bring him back to the farm as his son. And he throws a big, huge party for it. And the older son, man, he's mad. When he hears all the party, he wants to know what's coming on. And so he goes to the younger, to one of the servants. What's going on? They said, your brother, he's back. And he was seething with anger. And the father went out. This is our father's heart. He's always going after us. And he's trying to get his brother to understand that a father's heart is love. And the son, the firstborn son, he's just leaves because he said, all these years, and in the Greek word, I slaved for you. I worked for you. Because see, that's how he saw his father's love. That he would work for his father's love. He would earn that love, and he couldn't understand that unconditional love of the father. And we don't know if the son ever went into the party or not. But if you think about that story, I feel like that's a picture of the church today, the modern day church. We think, we look at people and see their sins and, the church. And I was one of those people, it's like you're judging people. And we get turned into Pharisees. So that I suggest that you go to Luke 15 and you read that story and you meditate on it and you realize that is how God loves you, how he sees you when we come running. Now this is the heart of the covenant, and I want to first say what the covenant is not. The covenant is not a contract. The covenant is a sacred oath that pulls two people or parties together and makes them one. And I want to just share real quick, contract is something that you get on your car when you buy a new car and you make payments. You have a contract made out, you sign it. You may never meet anybody in that bank that you borrowed that money from. You have nothing to do with them. It's a contract. It's a business arrangement. It is not a covenant. Please don't ever call a covenant a contract. It is not. I have a friend and she's from Nigeria and she's a beautiful person and she's at my house. And she saw my notes on the covenant and she's reading them and she says, oh, yes, we have this in our country. And I go, what? Please tell me about it. Please tell me about it. And she said, yes, there was this village and they did not have a family and they wanted to be a family with our village. So they made covenant with our village. And I thought, what a perfect description of a covenant. It's all about family. And I know in America and in our world today, there's a lot of dysfunctional families out there, and they're not healthy. But in the family of God, when the love of God is taught and expressed to one another, and people are loved and expressed, that love is expressed to them in a whole family. There's a sense of acceptance. You know you're always loved. And even when you mess up, you know that you're always loved. I knew my mom. I had a wonderful Christian mother. I had a stepfather that was difficult, but I think in his own way he loved me somehow, but he was just kind of rough and tough. But my mom, I knew no matter what, I knew my mom loved me and I loved her. And because of that love, I never wanted to disappoint her. You know, I always wanted to be that good girl for my mom. And I always wanted her to be proud of me. And that's how love is. You don't want to betray that trust of one another. So I think calling the covenant a family relationship is beautiful. And there was a book I read back in 2004, I believe. And it's under a different title today. And the title of that book is The Power of the Blood Covenant. And it's by Malcolm Smith. Please get that book. It is Christianity 101. When I read that book and my eyes were opened to the love of God and I saw the covenant, I saw the gospel. Because I was saying, God, what is the gospel? There's something wrong with this gospel we've been taught today in the churches. Something's missing. And when I saw the covenant love, the covenant commitment, the oaths that were spoken and promised, and they were ratified in the blood of Jesus, I wept. I saw the covenant in Genesis chapter 15, and I'll probably get to that either the next video or the video after. There's so much foundation that needs to be laid for the covenant. But there was a book I read by Trumball, and it's more of a historical account of covenant. It was written in the late 1800s. It's still out there on Kindle if you want to find it. I believe it's called the Blood Covenant, and the last name is Trumball. And if I remember to do this, I'll put a link down below. But in that book, it was like there was always blood. There was always a cutting that took place. There was a mixture of the two partners mixing their blood together. Sometimes they added it to wine and they both drank from the same cup, and they saw themselves as one blood. And what I took away from that book was, this is phenomenal when you think about it. When you apply it to the covenant we have with God, they wouldn't marry each other's sisters or daughters because they saw that as incest. They took that covenant thing as a literal thing. And that woke in me when we take the communion. That Jesus said, this is my blood. We're reenacting that covenant that he made for us. He cut covenant. And that's the word covenant comes from the word to cut. It's over 300 times in the Bible. And there's once you understand the covenant and all the ritual steps and what they mean, you'll see it throughout the Bible. And it made the whole Bible come to life for me. I saw the Bible as scattered pieces of puzzles. I didn't understand a lot of things, but once I understood the covenant, it was like all those pieces came together and they made one complete picture, and that picture was Jesus. And nothing else for me worked. all the religious stuff I tried to do to try to be a good Christian did not hold me up when I went through my testing and trial. It was learning about Jesus and understanding the covenant and realizing my oneness with Him and realizing He was not letting me go. He swore an oath in His own blood that I would be His and He would be mine. And that's the beauty of the covenant. And if you get a chance, get those books on the covenant, the one by Malcolm Smith and Trumball. And there's other ones out there, and I think there might even be a free one on Kindle if you can't afford to buy a book on the covenant. And I just pray in the name of Jesus that when you see that covenant, when you understand that, what it is, everything you've been taught in church, nearly everything, there was some good things taught. I'm not bashing churches or pastors, but that revelation of God's love, that's what changes the heart. That's what makes you different. Because now there's a verse that I love, and I believe it was Paul. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. See, I don't live anymore. Christ lives in me. And that understanding that I belong to Him now, the life is different. It's sweet. And knowing He loves me so completely, that breaks the chains of sin and bondage, and God doesn't want us in any bondage. So this is all I'm going to say for today. And next time we get together, I hope to go into the robe, the exchange of the robe, and what that meant for me and how it helped me during my crisis time when my brain was being flooded with self-condemnation, and during this process I discovered God's love, and I discovered my worth and my value to Him, and I stopped beating myself up. I stopped self-examining myself, because He makes me righteous. He makes me good. He makes me acceptable. And Jesus cried out on the cross, "It is finished." And that's the original word is tetelestai. I think that's how you say it. And it means complete, done. There's nothing you can add to it. It was a word they used when on a bill, a sale that was paid in full, they would stamp it with tetelestai. That meant paid in full. Nothing else is owed. So, no more works. We're not saved by works. Remember, by grace you are saved through faith. And this not of yourself. It is the gift of God, not of works, so that no man may boast. Well, I'm going to stop talking right now. I want you to know you are loved, and God has got you in the palm of His hands, and He is not letting you go. God bless you.